And we are coming to you live here with Phil Dureza. He is a family law practitioner right here in Hawaii. And we have a few topics to talk with Phil about today. And as our viewers start to join us, if you do have questions, please type them in the comment section and we'll go ahead and we'll answer them live. Questions, comments, anything that that pertains to you guys. So Phil, one of the hot topics that I think people are wondering is with COVID-19, how did that affect the family law and the courts, and is everything all backed up? Like what's happening with COVID-19 and divorce?
Well, I think when COVID initially excuse me, impacted the state, the family law practice was affected as much as everybody in terms of having to scramble and provide alternate means of access for whoever needs to access family court. So a lot of the hearings are virtual now. That's been the biggest change. But the court has done, I think, a fairly good job in terms of adapting to the situation and allowing for that access. So even though many of the hearings, I would say most of the hearings aren't in person anymore, they have done a good job of setting up Webex access, social distancing, remote access. And so it's been functioning fairly well, I think, given the circumstances.
Do you think, and again, this is, we'll get the disclaimers out of the way. Even though he is an attorney, you're not providing any legal advice, correct?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. And though,
covers it for this.
Yeah, and though we are licensed realtors, we're not providing any real estate advice. This is just a Facebook live streaming, and fortunately or unfortunately, we need to make those statements in this very litigious society we operate in. But boom, done. We're protected now, right? We can go in. We can go hunt vampires and stuff, and chase ghosts, and we're all protected now because we got our liability statement out of the way. The question.
So I want to I want to give a quick shout out to Phil and for his hard work and diligence with me on a personal situation, and I can just speak to his tenacity as an attorney and be willing to think outside the box and be solution oriented, and just the professionalism that I personally experienced with Phil and my particular real estate situation. So just putting that out there. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. So you get, if we were to fill out a Yelp for you, we would give you 5 stars on your attorney Yelp.
Actually, I did. I filled out a Yelp.
Oh, you did?
There's a 5-star for him and Tom. So yes.
Yeah.
So thank you.
So going back to our question there, hey, how has COVID-19 affected the divorce process within our court system? Here's my other question. Do you find that has it caused delays having to switch to virtual or WebEx, or is pretty much the pace the same?
Initially when COVID came on, the court had to cancel court for a month, essentially. So pretty much all the cases that was scheduled for, I think that was in March, had to be rescheduled. So initially there was a backlog of cases, and so it took the court a little while to sort of get to the backlog and be current again. But from what I notice now, there hasn't been really much delay. I feel like if you file a motion today, it'll be on the court's docket in 2 months, which has been sort of the same pre-COVID.
Gotcha.
So Phil, in our industry, we've had to do some pivoting with the meeting via Zoom and the WebEx, right? So what we found is that things have actually become a little bit more efficient with our meetings. Are you finding that it's the same thing with the court system, that you're able to be a little bit more efficient?
You don't have to jump in your car and come all the way out to Kapolei.
Right. Yeah. So in a way, it's easier for attorneys to attend hearings and all of that if it's via WebEx. If it's something, if your hearing is not that complicated, then it's great because you can show up to court via Webex, and 20 minutes later it's over. So in that sense, it's more advantageous that it's virtual, for less complicated and less contested cases.
Yeah.
If you have an agreement ahead of time and all you have to do is just confirm the agreement, at court via video, it's great.
Yeah.
It becomes a bit more problematic if your case is contested or if it's more complicated, because the virtual appearance isn't the same as being in person.
Yeah.
You are not with your client during the virtual, physically you're not with your client during the virtual hearing. And so if you need to sort of consult with your client right away, it's like, okay, you got to text them or, do all that instead of just speaking directly to them. And so you kind of lose that advantage. And especially if you do a contested type hearing where it's like evidentiary and you have to introduce witnesses and evidence, it's a lot more difficult, I think, via virtual.
Yeah. So when you say stuff like, "Oh wow, the other attorney is being so aggressive. Maybe let's do this," and you're like, "Oops, did I say that out loud?" So because you can't like turn to your client and give them some coaching or the
Right.
legal advice that you would do. So yeah, like you said, texting you lose a lot, unless your thumbs are like super fast.
And Attilio, your sound quality, you kind of sound like a robot.
Oh, am I going into robot mode again?
Robot mode. So Phil, do you guys have any word as far as when the in-person hearings are going to start up again, or is it kind of like a hybrid that they're going to start doing, or what's the news on that?
Yeah, no specific updates on that. What's been happening is like month by month, close to the end of the month, we would just get an update from the judiciary extending prior orders. And so there was nothing, no orders suggesting that they were going to try to do in person anytime soon. So we're kind of anticipating that we're going to be on this track for a little bit.
Okay. Oh, and then we can't hear you, Attilio, if you're saying something.
Would it be helpful if I took myself off of mute? But I've often been told by my friends and relatives that I wish Attilio did have a mute button. But okay, only when we're live streaming can you have the power to mute Attilio. But the other question that I had is there been any other pivots or changes or adjustments besides the in-person versus virtual? Any other changes or adjustments because of COVID-19?
Well, they are stacking the schedules at court, which is it's better in a way because you could plan around it. So prior to COVID, what they would do is just, if you have a morning case or an afternoon case, sometimes the court will just tell everybody to show up at the same time.
Yeah.
And so even though they're telling you to show up at 8:30 and you show up and there's 10 cases there along with you. Right. But obviously that's not conducive to the COVID social distancing situation. And so what they do now is they stagger the cases. So you would get a specific time frame for yours. And so they may tell you your hearing's not till 10:30 or 9:30, which is better for us because then we can plan around it and, do things before that time.
So they're becoming a little bit more organized with the schedule instead of a surprise. You're up next.
Well, that's certainly my perspective. I'm not sure the court thinks
that's good.
But I do think that's that way.
Yeah, in case any of the judges or attorneys or bailiffs or people of the court are watching, we want to be diplomatic, Adrian, in our response and saying it's just different and more efficient use of your time. Because I've been down there and I know when the bailiff comes out, and they start yelling and screaming because someone's not in there, and then you got to go down the hallway and down the stairs and you're yelling for the other party's name, that it's either you're on the Webex or you're not, especially when, and I know you've come across this when, correct me if I'm wrong, but the divorce is handled typically in a particular jurisdiction, and so you might have other parties. Is it being more helpful for parties that may not be on island to be able to come in on the Webex?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it helped a lot. I mean, before the standard was that if you couldn't appear in person, then you have to write a letter asking for the court's permission, and you have to wait for the court's approval for that. And now it's, the court sends an email and, you just click on it. So it kind of doesn't matter, where you are.
So what before was the abnormal has now become the normal. And then the new normal now is people are able to, obviously, I mean, we've eliminated all the travel time, having to fly in from outer islands or mainland and stuff like that. So yeah, kudos to the court system for pivoting in that direction. And streamlining. Yeah. Because, I don't think anybody is super excited about going to divorce court. It's kind of like, they're like, yippee, today I get to go to divorce court this morning. I don't think anybody gets up. So kudos to them, keeping everybody COVID safe and making the process, it's not a most enjoyable process. And at least by making it more efficient, it's more palatable for people. What else, Adrian? You have some other questions?
Well, I want to move on to our next topic because it is, does relate to what we do as professionals in the real estate industry. So, with real estate and divorce, I know that, the more variables that a couple has, the more complex the case can be. So typically, like in the Hawaii law, how does that work when a couple is divorcing and they own real estate together? Just maybe like just one property, and then how is investment property typically treated?
Sure. So basically, if I can take it back, more broadly, all assets and debts that were incurred during the marriage is typically equally divisible in a divorce. So the question would be, whether or not a particular asset is was it incurred during the marriage? So, assuming that you have a marital home during the marriage, that is equally divisible by the parties, whatever the equity of that home is. It gets a little bit different if, for example, that home was premarital. So, for example, in a marriage where one spouse had a premarital home valued at $200,000 at the time of marriage, and then at the time of divorce, the value of the home is, let's say, $300,000. So the only thing that's divisible at that home, with that home, is the equity since the date of marriage. So if the equity, let's say there's no debt on that house. And so what's divisible is not the 300, but only the 100,000 that
the gain
rose in value, during the marriage.
Yeah. So I guess that's the for the lay persons to understand. I mean, that's the definition of the word divorce is to divide, right? So okay, and then if you even want to simplify it more and even go big picture, when you're going through the divorce process, it's money and the kids, right? Money and the kids. I mean, in the money category, you got real estate, assets, debt, mortgages, 401k plans, all of that, and then I guess the two categories that you talk about as far as assets is premarital and then marital, is what you just mentioned.
Yes, those are some of the big categories. Another big category is inheritances. And so inheritances are considered the property of the person inheriting it. But the value of the inheritance from the time they receive it till the time of divorce is divisible. So it's kind of the same analysis. But so, for example, if during a marriage, one spouse received, Mickey Mantle baseball card that's worth, $100,000, right, at the time of the inheritance. And then at the time of divorce, it's $120,000. 20,000 of the, rise in value would be divisible. Yeah.
Would that also apply to Thai beanie babies?
I would say yes.
Anything of value.
Right.
Pineapple teen Thai beanie babies, and I get the eggplant teen beanie baby. But we're bringing some humor to a situation that's not so humorous when you're in it. But I like the words of the sage Dave Chappelle, the wise man of the time, and he says this: everything's funny until it's happening to you. And I would say that that's probably true with divorce. It's all funny until it's actually happening to you.
Yes.
Are you guys seeing an uptick? Because we saw on Fox News report that their estimate was that because of COVID-19 and all the home sheltering and being around each other more than being able to get to work and then come home, that there's an uptick in divorces. I don't know. Are you seeing that in the mainland? They're saying as much as 34%.
You know, we don't have the like hard statistics on that, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure if that's the case. It's been steady,
Yeah.
especially with our firm. That's
Yeah.
why they hired recently. So, you know, but I don't know whether or not it's been anything more than usual. But that is something that we expect as well.
Yeah.
That the numbers was going, especially once, you know, the lockdown is lifted more,
Yeah.
that the numbers will go up.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because it's just human nature for our lay people. If you're having challenges with someone and then you got to stay at home with them all day long, it kind of maybe unless you can bring your marriage counselor in with you when you're home sheltering. It's a challenging situation. So back to the real estate, Adrian. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to ask one more follow-up on for like COVID-19. I know that you guys were you considered essential businesses right up front or like what happened with that the lockdown and then what are you doing right now to remain safe at your firm?
We were and are considered essential business. So the lockdown never really applied to us. My boss Tom has been pretty good about tracking the state's social distancing guidelines and orders. So he kind of amends office policy based on that. So for example, before the last easing of restrictions at the office, we were doing half in, half out with a staff. So only one half of the staff would show up in the morning, then work from home in the afternoon, and then the other half would work in the morning and show up to the office in the afternoon.
Oh, you guys were like flip-flopping.
Like staggered.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And
but right now we're pretty much back in the office. Obviously, we have to wear face masks in the office, and there's a bunch of hand sanitizer stations and all of that. So we still definitely practice social distancing.
So all the attorneys, paralegals, and admin who are like, I like staying up all night watching Netflix. So can I come in the afternoon? And then all your morning people are like, can I come in the morning? Because then I can go home in the afternoon.
I did that actually. I was assigned in the morning, but I was like, can I do that?
I can't get caught up on my Walking Dead on Netflix. I got to get up early to show up to work. So that's good. Do you guys find your consultations with your clients being more with conference calls and phone and video than in person, or is that the same? Yes.
We tried it. I mean, we try to accommodate people who want to come in.
Yes.
But ideally, we try to be good about the social distancing and offer, the phone or video consultation first.
Gotcha. What platform do you all use for your video conferencing?
We don't. We don't have one, and so if they suggest it, I would have to say, if you have the account, email me the account. I'll show up. Otherwise, it has to be by phone. Yeah.
Well, the good news is that Zoom is free. You got to just and we're StreamYarding with you because you just clicked on our link. So thank you for being on there. I'm sure that's going to be something that you guys do more and more of. I'm curious, when you're Webexing in the court situation, do you get to screen share, or I don't know how the rules work as far as evidentiary and all that?
It is available, screen sharing. Okay. I haven't done that, but yeah, it is available.
Okay, gotcha. All righty. And then Adrian, you had another question?
Well, back to the real estate. I know we had talked with Phil a little bit before we went live, but there was, I think it was was it 2 years ago?
I will be very specific because I researched it. It was
thank you.
July 1st, 2018 is when it was.
All right.
And if somebody knows differently than me, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding in my research, July 1st, 2018.
Yeah, that's correct, I believe.
Yeah. And so that's a new law. It's only 2 years old. how has that come into play regarding real estate assets with divorcing parties?
Act 213 essentially is, well, we call it a financial restraining order, even though it actually restrains the parties from removing the children, if applicable, from the state of Hawaii. But overall, it functions as a financial restraining order. And what it essentially says is that each party is prohibited from expending, assets and getting into debt above what is normally necessary to, maintain the livelihood.
Gotcha.
And so that applies in real estate, obviously, as well. So when somebody files for divorce, that automatic financial restraining order kicks in, and it's automatic once you file. So there's, the court just automatically issues it. And what that does is it prohibits parties, in terms of real estate, you can't sell your real estate, obviously, without the agreement of the other party, written agreement of the other party, or per the order of the court.
Yeah.
And so it definitely limits what you can do with your property.
Yeah, and I wanted to give people explanations to that, or the reason. My understanding from Honolulu Board of Realtors and the Honolulu Association of Realtors is that the memos internally to us that it was adopted, and I've gone through a couple of training sessions with attorneys who've spoken on it. A lot of times you have, like, say, a stay-at-home spouse, and prevents the other spouse from selling the home. They don't work, they haven't worked in a while, and from selling the home out from under them and then displacing the occupying spouse and the children. And so it kind of puts a little stop on that so that you guys can get things worked out. And that was the reasoning for it, which totally makes sense. But Adrian or Phil, you had some more comments?
I was just going to say that you need both. If their name is on the title, then you're going to need their cooperation anyway. So this would be any kind of properties that they may not be on title for or may not even be aware of, right? And then
everything.
The other thing too is that, like, the courts, it's alleviating the courts from creating these restraining orders, right? Because now it's automatically in effect. So
yes,
more streamlining.
right.
Yeah, and I was doing some research on it too. It also applies to, like, moving the kids or transferring schools. I actually have the notes here. It says this act prevents the parties from selling, transferring, and this is from the not from the law itself, but this was from the paraphrasing or the interpretation from the Honolulu Board of Realtors. But the act prevents the parties from selling, transferring, encumbering, canceling, assigning, removing, or in any way disposing of any property, real or personal, belonging to or acquired by either party. There are some exceptions to this, such as being able to pay for reasonable expenses of living occurring in the ordinary and usual course of business required for, also for attorney's fees with written consent. So here's the key part: with written consent of both parties or by court orders, what you said earlier. Phil, our understanding is that the standard Honolulu Board of Realtors, Hawaii Association of Realtors listing agreement signed by both parties is adequate enough for the property to be listed for sale.
That would be my understanding as well.
Yeah.
The law just requires a written agreement, so I would think that would constitute that.
Yeah, and that's what we've been using. We've actually had first-hand experience directly on working with clients that we've been able to do this. For you realtors out there, pay attention to that, because the big mistake that we see realtors doing is listing the property for sale, say with, and I know we have cooperating parties and not cooperating parties when it comes to the thing, and then listing the property for sale with only the cooperating party's signature and not the other one, and then that's when you get in big trouble, right? So, what else, Adrian?
Well, I guess just, as we wrap this up with Phil, is there anything that we should have asked you that we haven't, that you wanted to touch on today with our viewers?
Nothing that comes to mind right now. The family law and divorce process obviously can be very complicated. So I
Yeah.
think it's a good idea just for everyone to seek legal advice. You don't necessarily have to retain an attorney, but
Uh-huh.
you're definitely thinking about going that route. That it's really good to seek legal advice and seek legal consultations to know what your rights are and to know what the process is.
Do you
Now,
guys do you offer
uh,
initial free consultation?
Yes, we do. We offer
Okay.
an initial 1 hour consultation.
And I'm sorry, Adrian, go ahead.
oh, I was going to ask that, but then I also know that I mean, not everybody can afford an attorney, and you guys are professional. You're wonderful, and you charge a lot, which is you're worth it, right? But not everybody has that budget. Is there a resource like that, like a free legal aid for people that are low income that just cannot afford the divorce
Yes,
attorney?
so legal aid does is well, it was established for that purpose for folks who are indigent. You can apply for legal aids services, and to the extent that they have an attorney available to help you, they definitely can, and they'll represent you in your divorce case. There's also an organization called Volunteer Legal Services. I also volunteer with them,
Oh,
and
nice.
Yeah.
yeah, what they do is they provide legal consultation. They may not, they generally don't represent you, but you can schedule an appointment with them, and they will coordinate you with one of their volunteer attorneys, and then they'll do like a 1 hour consultation with you with respect to the legal issues that you're thinking about. They can help you fill out the proper forms, things like that.
Yeah.
Now, Phil, does your entire firm, do all of you guys volunteer for that organization, or is it just a select few?
We actually, oddly enough, we actually all do, and Tom doesn't mandate us, but Tom
Yeah.
Tom volunteers the most.
Yeah.
But we oddly enough all volunteer for volunteer legal services. Yes.
Well,
And
that says a lot about
I've got
your
a, and I've got a quick story on that, because
yeah.
I've got a client who low income. She had a terrible situation, and very close with her, and it was so funny because we were talking, and she said, I've got he's the best, like he's so great. And she had shared with me that she had gone through the legal services, and she's like, you need to contact him. And it was Tom. Right. So I mean, it's just it's wonderful that you guys are out there serving the community, and for the people that are a little bit less fortunate.
Well, I think, and you know what that's helpful for you guys, Phil, is that you guys don't end up on the butt of all those lawyer jokes. Because you guys are the lawyers, you guys aren't the lawyers we love to hate. You guys are the lawyers we love to love, because that says a lot when your leadership is volunteering the most for the low-income people facing divorce, because we know that the culture of any kind of, whether it's a law firm, a business, or a nonprofit, or a church, everything flows from leadership. So that says something about you and Tom and your whole organization, that's what you guys do. So kudos to your law firm and yourself for helping the people. Unfortunately, all income stratas go through this unfortunateness of divorce, right. And so good job on you guys' part. Anything else, Adrian, for Phil, or we got to let him go back to serving his clients?
No, I just want to thank you so much for your time, and we're looking forward to having you as a guest on our radio show this next week.
Yeah.
So,
Adrian, did we get our resources pages up for this yet, or no? I don't know if we have. Maybe we can give them on Team Ellie's resources.
Yes, we do have. We're working on a page on our website that includes, real estate and divorce, as a resource. So we'll definitely put a backlink for you guys as, a good resource for anyone that, that needs that consultation.
Well, and there's our plug for ourselves. Just go to teamlally.com. You can click on the resources drop down, and we will have a section on there, because we're noticing, unfortunately, we've done quite a few of these, but we think it might be on the rise. And with COVID-19 and with working with Phil, we want to be the connecting point for people in our community that are unfortunately having to go down this path, and help them pretty much with their biggest asset that they're going to need to be dividing up. So that's it for us. And as we always say, be safe.
And aloha.
And aloha. All right. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.